like I said, I'm too excited today. Uh, all right, we are going to be recording this. It'll be available to the public. If anybody is not okay with that, please say so. Okay. The background to this point, we have talked about an alternative peer group is a much bigger organization. It includes clinical elements like IOP, schools, individuals, family counseling, uh, residential, all sorts of stuff. But in the beginning days, you're looking for like-minded clinicians to relate to as you build up, unless you are coming from the other side where you're a clinician and you're looking how to add the alternative peer group program to the element. Okay, but either way, the facts are the closer you can get these relationships, the better it is for the clientele and the better it is for all the organizations. So with that being said, I would like to know kind of where you guys share with the group where you guys are at on this process, what you're thinking, what you have going on, if anything. Like if you have somebody come in and they need individual counseling weekly, what are you doing with it right now? Who wants to go first?
So Michelle and I just wanted to state that we have nothing going on at this point in time, so we're here to listen.
Well, I would.
That's not fair.
Yeah, I have more to add on to that, right? We don't have a lot going on because there's not anything here. They've closed I think the closest inpatient treatment center for our teens would be 160, 150 miles away.
Wow.
Yeah, and our IOPs are terrible. That's the feedback we've been getting from families. So we are looking at the fact that we'll probably have to create those. And instead of partnering with them, like I know the woman who runs an adult treatment center for a big treatment conglomerate here in the Seattle area. And so she and I have started conversations about her helping us start a teen program. So I'm looking at cherry picking key people I think who could help us start programs.
Okay, so one of the actually that's exactly what you do. You do cherry pick and you pick for your needs as they arise. Okay, very typically you're going to have a need for, and on the residential, all right, my suggestion is you cherry pick residentials that aren't there. If possible, people are going to have to travel for right now. If they're that far away there, then who cares? So, pick residentials in cities that are either owned and run under the alternative peer group approach, or residentials that have a history of working well with this 18 months to 4 years fully thing, because they're the ones who, as they refer back to you, will have done what you're most looking for. Nobody's perfect, and there is no perfect match. One of the reasons why they're functionally, in the end, it's better if it's all under one roof is very simple. As you're dealing with a client, you're going to have two elements of the treatment continuum that are going to disagree on what's going to happen next. And unfortunately, that throws things into a position where the client's disease can manipulate and probably come up with whatever least fits the situation best. That's the way this disease runs. That's the way it does things, both the codependent and the dependent side, for lack of better words. So if you can get it all under one roof, what happens is those two will disagree, but somebody over them will make the decision, and you keep the continuity of care going. Right, instead of setting up a battle of any kind and bad feelings and all that kind of stuff. That typically is what happens. However, if you don't have it, then yeah, you've got to move through this discussion. What do you think? Worry about people's feelings, well, you're going to worry about them anyway, but you worry about them more when it's a separate organization than when you're all together and you know each other and work every day with each other. So what you're doing, this cherry picking is a really good idea. And the input I have for you is, again, on the residential elements, since you seem to be not have one, look to the cities that have APGs with residential elements that'll probably blend real well, so that in y'all's case, y'all are doing all younger group virtually. Is that right? Okay. That young person will go off for 30 days or 60 days or whatever. What happens to them there will be very, very positive, and then they will come back, and the people you talk to while they're there know what they're coming back to and what's supposed to happen. A couple of options in that is, there are several in Houston. You might want to call one of the members here in Houston and say, where do you go? I know that George and Teen and Family, George actually goes over to the residential program, the park here in Houston, goes over there, trains, does weekly sessions, the whole thing with all the young people in it. But you might want to call George about that. Sherry Phillips in Pittsburgh has a really good residential program element that they're working with. So there are things around, and poke around and do that cherry picking, but do it. And what will happen is those relationships will grow into much tighter organization things. What about the day-to-day counsel? I mean, let's again go back to like a weekly counseling. How are y'all organized for that, Michelle and Jim?
We don't have that set up yet.
Okay. What are you waiting on?
It's not that, well, I guess we're waiting on finding those connections and how to find those connections. But as we're talking, I mean, I think it's just a matter of talking to our parents about who their kids are seeing and if they like them, and then, talking to those therapists that are working well with the kids that we currently have.
All right. Both of y'all are y'all certified peer people, or what? Do you have any of that kind of thing? Okay, so y'all are running the program and your life experience counselor type.
Yeah, and James is starting the CDP program here in the fall.
CDP stands for?
Well, it was chemical dependency professional. They've changed it again.
To the SUDP or SUPD.
They change it every few years.
Up there. So.
How long will that take?
It'll only take me 5 quarters. I already have my prereqs done.
Oh, okay.
Just over a year.
When that gets done, you can start doing doing a lot of the individual type work within the scope of what you're doing, and that will make that real easy. And notice, guys, how this is developing. Right now, they don't have anything in-house. Shortly, they're about to have something actually in-house. That same thing will happen with an IOP process, and et cetera. And if you, in other classes, we've talked about organizing the economics. If you get your economics organized around that, they will continue to fund themselves also as it breaks out. Who has an IOP? Anybody on this call have an IOP of their own? Tell us about it, Nancy.
So we started with private practice only, therapists and psychiatrists, medication management. And then we got we started with adolescent PHP and IOP. And it's mental health primary, but so many of the kids come in, and substance use is a huge component, obviously. I don't have to tell that to this group of people. And so we got our joint commission accreditation, and then also expanded, and now we have an adult PHP IOP as well. So we have basically that entire middle services, and it's going really well, being able to refer back and forth. Having a PHP program that I can refer to and not be nauseous is incredible, because there are, like y'all were saying, there are a lot, especially the ones that work with the adolescents, that they're crap. They don't help. They don't involve the families enough. And so, but one of the huge things that we're noticing is missing, even though we have a great continuum in that middle area for the clinical side, is what we're missing is the community. What we're missing is for the clients to be able to connect with each other long term. And they get that connection in the IOP and the PHP group. But without this long term thing, it goes away. So that's where we are.
Okay. So two you say in middle, which means, the socialization element and then the residential element is what you're missing. Is that right? Okay.
Yes,
What
exactly.
about
And
school? What about the school element?
so our PHP program for adolescents does have a school component. We have a teacher, an education facilitator. Traditionally, what we do is we coordinate with whatever school the kid's already enrolled in when the school season's in session and facilitate them doing that work there and then getting credit to transfer back when they re-enter the school system. So it doesn't stand alone. It's a part of the PHP umbrella.
Okay. Let me tell you how, again, drawing on some history, a little trick that we learned back in 1986. And that is you've got IOP, you've got individuals going on, and we had the AAPG element going on with adolescents. We didn't have a residential, and the residential sucked. The options in Dallas at the time sucked. And so what we were able to do for, those cases that weren't outlined, we were able to put together a foster care home. We rented a big house up north of Dallas, and it was a big 1901 Texas ranch house. And it was real cool. It was divided up into two elements. They had, for the girls to get to the guys, they had to go through this special space, and for the guys to get to the girls, they couldn't commingle, and we got a foster care license for that. And the thing we had to do to make sure we met up with all the requirements and everything is we could not do treatment on site of that facility. They could live there, we could do social activities and all that kind of stuff, but for treatment, every day they would get in the van and they'd drive into the outpatient treatment facility. So we were basically doing a day treatment program with a residential element, very minor. It was a tiny investment to get it done. The foster care license was very, very easy to get, and it was very financially doable. We had 2 horses out there and everything. It was really cool. I loved going out there. It was a blast. We had 2 horses, all sorts of stuff. It's out north of Lake Dallas out there. I can't remember the name of that little community. It used to be wooded. Now it's houses, but that's an idea you might want to investigate. And it's a real quick way to get an extra level of care and get things going as fast as possible, as well as then you add on the APG element. I told y'all there are a lot of really exciting things going on. One of them centered around the training stuff that we've been talking about. And I had a long conversation with Jessie Robedy over in, I want to say Austin or San Antonio, can't remember, but she's also involved with this co-occurring disorder thing. And they are able to deliver the didactic elements and the training for peer facilitators. And I was talking to her about what we're looking for is an ability to deliver the online, being on the line training. And it looks like there's a lot of common ground. And it would be really nice if all of this training that we're going to put together as a group would lead towards certification and licensure at different levels. So that's what we're going to go for. But the contacts are being made. It's pretty exciting stuff. If you guys love training and that's your thing, please let us know. All right, and we'll get that plugged in. Nancy, do you think that would help? That idea I just gave you.
As it relates to basically getting a residential program without fully having a residential program?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that's a really
move in that direction a little bit
without having to without having to go into the whole hospitalization piece.
And it really works. And actually, it gave us some leverage in working with the clients that we enjoyed. Sometimes you get into the some of the things when you have to provide nursing and all of those kind of things, it can just get to be so cold that you lose some of the socialization elements that you want to be in your program. Not that there's not a place for that kind of severely controlled, process, but there are also places in between too. The trick is going to be responsibly screening and placing only those who belong there. But you guys already have that in place, Sean, what's going on with you guys? Tell us more about it.
So in New Hampshire, we had one residential facility, and surprise, surprise, the youth brought drugs into the facility.
No.
I think he brought the Z bars, and a bunch of kids overdosed. All had to go to the hospital. And our Republican governor said, "That's it. Their contract is done," and closed them down. Thank you, Governor Sununu. So we have and that was the first in the state. Like, we were so excited. We were a part of it. It was great. Yeah. So we don't have any residential facilities. We have 2 IOPs in the state. Everybody's kind of doing outpatient counseling.
Yeah.
So it's tough. There's not a lot. And then obviously, I think we're, I don't know, number 2 or 3 for opioid overdoses, because we're, per capita, we're so small. And so that's why we got a lot of SOAR funds and the other grant. But it's hard building it because, transportation is an issue. So we have one community mental health center doing outpatient counseling, and they would like to start an IOP. Sorry, I have a little naked 4-year-old right next to me.
Yes. No, we can't see him. He's behind
Okay.
behind the screen.
Okay, shh, no, Mama's talking. Okay, those are different people that Mama's talking to.
No, go ahead. Make a lot of noise, dude. It's just a bunch of goobers here. This is not a deal.
It's when it's summer, they just love being naked. They're just in, like, we have one of those like little Hershey Kiss shaped pools that's about 3 feet high. And they're in and out of it all day long. And we're on Zoom meetings all day long. And so they're just, who's that? Want to know.
Please socialize with me.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Who are they? He's got fluff all over his face. Life is good.
Hey, Sean, you were saying something about transportation, and we're running into that issue too, because we have kids who are all over the city, and they can be, as much as 20 miles away, which in Seattle traffic means they're a good hour away. Mm-hmm. And so we've been struggling with that, especially this summer, because we're trying to do team groups in person, but they're in the middle of the day, and the parents are working and they can't get them there. And so we try to arrange carpools, but it doesn't work out for these kids who are really far outside the city. So I started doing some research, and Uber and Lyft do work with nonprofits. And so I was going to reach out to them and see, we have to remove this barrier of transportation. That's what I'm seeing, to get these kids to meetings, especially when things open back up and they're going to meetings, sometimes daily. So I will share with everyone what I find out, but that's on my short list to get in contact with them to see what the opportunities are there.
Yeah.
I
think Medicaid will transfer 16 and older in New Hampshire. But, we're doing younger than that as well. One of our IOPs that's successful is they just have a van and they just go and travel and collect them, but we don't have the traffic that obviously Seattle does, or Texas, or anybody.
Well, a little feedback here, going again, pulling from history. Transportation problems led to, and as quickly as possible, led to new groups also. That's how, as I've said let me see, I'll use PDAP as an example. 1979, there were 23 different groups just in Houston. And the reason for that was Houston is spread all over the place. And so the traffic was, or not the traffic, but also the ability of people to get places was limited by that. And that's how it ended up happening. I got a question to ask y'all. Thinking back to those, and I'm not saying there's answers here. I'm actually asking a question. Thinking back to those days, we really didn't have transportation issues in the 70s, in the 80s, 90s. I'm thinking of all the programs that I worked with. We didn't have transportation issues because the adolescents were driving, and they seemed to solve it. For us, when we would take them on an activity or an outing or something, we would do it, for socialization purposes, but actually transportation issues, we didn't have very many. What's the situation? Are the adolescents not driving? I don't mean in the COVID thing. I mean, let's pretend COVID's not here for a second. Are they not driving?
That's a good point. So in Seattle, a lot of kids don't learn to drive because we're a huge city. It's intimidating, and a lot of them end up using public transportation. So you're right. Right now, it's an issue in large part because the kids are encouraged not to be on the bus, that the bus is only for essential transportation. Okay. And that's coming from our city and state government.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to go where we've gone. I promise you, you don't want this. And
we know.
If we had not done what we did, we would be where you are. I'd much rather be where you are.
I think that's interesting, John. I would love to learn more about people's experiences with that, because just anecdotal, my cousin's daughter is a sophomore in college who's just now getting her driver's license because she finally decided it was necessary. And my godchild, who's in high school, and her best friend have no driver's license and no need for it. So it's almost like, to me, that's the most puzzling thing about young people right now. Because when I was 16, I was like, give me a freaking license and my freedom. Really? And they don't seem to care. Like, that's the one thing that blows my mind about at least the young people I interact with the most right now. So
yeah,
I'd love
we got our learner's permits at 14 when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was liking to drive cars before I got a license. So
well, yeah, there were a few of those out there. There were a few. My cousin had a brand new GTO in Zenith, Missouri, population 600, and when she was 14 years old, with no nothing, driving around with that fine GTO. Well, so things are different. So we're gonna have to pay attention to this. That's very interesting. Go ahead.
For us, driver's ed is really expensive.
Really?
So for us, it's like $600 to $700. So kids, they can get their learner's permit at 15 and a half and get their license at 16, but a lot of them don't have the money to take driver's ed. So you can just take the test at 18 without driver's ed. But if you want to get it before 18, you have to take driver's ed. So a lot of them just can't afford it.
And they're not doing it in school. See, when I was in high school, we had driver's ed. It was free.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to go through all these private agencies and pay. And so a lot of them, it's not possible for a lot of them. So some, their families drive them, but.
As y'all solve these things, please share it with the group. Let's get it out and get it around, because that's something I'm serious. We hadn't, in my time working in the field, I didn't have to worry with that. Because they were driving at 15 years old, and so they were just going picking each other up. The one thing that did develop, and you might want to look at, is, like I said, that being spread out led to new groups. Mm-hmm. And the groups were big. Some of them were huge. I mean, hundreds of kids in one group. Some of them, it was very common for there to be 40 or 50 kids. And then in addition to that, their families, 75, 85 people. Kaylin, I don't know. I don't know. Hey.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
You are delicious. Look at you. Look at those cheeks. You see the baby? Yeah.
I was relating so much, especially to you, about the naked babies in summertime. I mean, it's 100 degrees here, and they just live in their diapers or underwear, swim in and out of the pool all day. So I relate. So this is Kira.
Hi.
That's Jackson.
Hey, Jackson.
Swimming.
What? Go
So,
swimming?
Yeah, he's saying something about going swimming.
Good.
But I really was inspired to chime in because it's crazy how parallel all the challenges are all over the United States. You know what I mean? Transportation is such a huge issue for us too. And we have a 15-passenger van that somebody donated to us. So, but even with that, you're talking about like, you know, the gas, and we have kids that are spread out all over the city. And then we're running into liability issues because the more we're on the road, the more we're risking an accident, right? So,
And the insurance.
Right, the insurance and all of those things are crazy. And so what we came up with is we are distance learning for the next school year, and we're going to support our local, because Clark County School District has shut down all of the schools. They do not want to take on any liability when it comes to COVID. So we, APG, in the spirit of supporting Mission High School, our local all public, all recovery high school, there's about 80 students that attend there. We are going to support distance learning for any students that are in need, will be able to. We can facilitate about 25 kids safely following all the guidelines and all of that. So, but transportation, I mean, we deal with very low, low income families. So we're talking like there's one car, if any car at all, for a family of like 5 or 6. So even if they do have those driver's license, they don't have access to a vehicle to even get them to where we are, you know. And our city's pretty big, so you know, you're talking, you know, on every end of town, you know, it takes, you know, anywhere from, you know, 30 to 45 minutes depending on the traffic to get to our central location. So what we did is we're planning on doing like 2 to 3 neutral pickup spots. So parents or kids can get themselves to the nearest pickup spot, and then we'll go pick up kids from those spots. That's ideally what we would like to do. But we have no idea what to expect for this upcoming school year, or how many kids are going to participate, or any of that stuff. So, and that's something that we run into even outside of COVID or outside of distance learning. I mean, it's hard, but we have a grant through RTC, and they give us about 1,500 to 2,500 bus passes, 24-hour bus passes a year. So, so the kids really have no excuse whatsoever to not jump on a bus, unless mom or dad is not comfortable with that. So, that's what we're dealing with. And then as far,
go ahead.
No, keep going. I was going to jump into something else, so go ahead.
The young people that are populating your program, what's the socioeconomic levels that you're dealing with? What primarily, where are they coming from?
Are you talking like how much income?
Yeah, is it medium, middle class, low?
No, we're talking about like poverty level.
All right.
We're talking about like, yeah.
One situation in history that we did deal with transportation problems successfully with people who were not driving were when we were running the big low socioeconomic programs. And we did it because we were able to do it through Medicaid, and I hear that Medicaid has shifted to, once again, they are covering substance use disorder for adolescents. The model that we put together, which became, by the way, the largest Medicaid program in Texas at the time. It was just prior to managed care coming into Medicaid and messing it up for the next 20 years. But the model that we used was a lot of the low socioeconomic people in Houston, and we were in Houston, we were in Dallas, we were in Corpus, and we were in San Angelo, 4 cities in the state. But Houston alone was the largest in the state, Medicaid program in the state. The model we used was we would go in, most of the low socioeconomic people lived in apartment complexes, big apartment complexes, and those kind of things. And most of those complexes had club rooms that were locked down because they got used for nothing but drugs and prostitution and that kind of stuff. And we would go in and talk to the management and say, we want to do this program. If you will give us use of your club room, we will, station somebody there, and et cetera. Then, and they usually said yes, and usually always the places were in good enough shape for us to go on in, and to get an outpatient license on that facility. Okay, from the state. In Texas, you had to have an outpatient license. We'd get an outpatient license on it, and we would put the program there. Then we would buy 10 gillion pizzas, let every parent in the program, in the apartment complex, know we were going to have a pizza party and talk about parents. And there are a large number of parents in those low socioeconomic communities that are very unhappy with what's happening with their kids and really want help. And if you have a pizza party, they really show up. And that was the beginning. That was the first parent meeting, right? And because it was all happening there, we really didn't have to worry too much about transportation. And those complexes were huge, and especially with the outlying ones. I mean, we had thousands and thousands of people who could focus into that center there. We did like to take them out on the weekends and things like that as part of the program. There was enough income provided by the Medicaid billing to cover the costs of that transportation. And that's how we did it. We ended up having a karate class, and each one of those groups would be brought to the karate. We had a central center. Each one of those groups would come in for the karate class once a week, which was an absolute hoot. We even had tournaments. We had karate tournaments, and the parents would show up. It was light contact, but we had some of the counselors would be ring girls. We'd put clothes on them and stuff, but you know what I mean? Walk around with the things over their head. It was a blast. Had one guy go, "Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble." Just the whole thing. So if they're low socioeconomic, you might want to investigate the possibility of using Medicaid. And I'll be glad to share with you the specifics of how we did it also.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. That's something that we're looking into. And that was when I was jumping into the next thing is, so Tin High, there is no hero in heroin. That's our mother 501c3. And our APG is a program underneath that 501c3. So, and we just got state certified to open an IOP. So we are now going to be able to have that element to be able to bridge the gap, right? So, and we too, also our adolescent treatment centers and treatment availability is atrocious. I mean, you have one level that's, $8,000 to even get an intake. Right. And then you have Medicaid, which will cover 10 sessions of IOP, 10 sessions. That's it. And then they let them go. Right. So essentially 10 days of treatment, and then they're done.
Right.
So, and there's no in between. And it's funny when you were talking about having, doing the PHP where you have a house off campus and then you're bringing them to treatment to be able to facilitate that. And it's funny because I'm thinking all of the really successful treatment centers, the good ones out here in Vegas, do that exact model.
Yeah.
And it didn't even dawn on me that that's something that might be beneficial for us, because I'm always on Joe about like, what can we do to give, because I have parents that are calling me every day with kids that are just completely out of control. They have no idea what to do. And the resources are like nothing, you know. And it's horrible when you have to turn a parent away because you don't know what to do, because you can't provide the level of care that they need, and you can't find anywhere for them to go. It's the worst.
Yeah, I know.
So create it ourselves, right?
Yeah, start it.
Kaylin,
you know, way to start something is start something. That's how you do
right?
it.
Say you have it, and then it'll come together, right, John?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
your
And
thing.
actually, that's kind of what happens. You go, well, we got that, you know.
I have a question for Kaylin before we move on. Kaylin, you mentioned support for students doing online learning. Are you talking about in-person support, like getting the kids together during the school day?
Yes. So we are a drop-in center. So any kid that is in need of any services, parent that's in need of any services, we are going to stay open as long as it's safe to do so. So yes, we are going to provide that. The school district has issued every student in Clark County School District a Chromebook. So they will come in with devices. We've set up like a virtual webcam as well. So like if there's students at home that are not allowed to leave, they can interact with the school day or the program day that's going on at APG. So there's like an interactive element too, that we're able to have the kids that are able to show up, and the kids that are at home can still have, you know what I mean, do stuff together, socialize, like have some sort of social element. So yes, we are providing both live and the virtual element.
Yeah, we're exploring that same thing, although under our current restrictions, we can only get 5 or 6 people together at a time. So we're hoping we open up a little bit more.
And I think unfortunately, you know, our governor is doing it week by week, and we thought we were going to go back into phase 1 this last week, and he was like, let's wait another week. So all of those things could change in the drop of that. And so just trying to stay as flexible as possible when it comes to that stuff. But we're going to move forward as long as it looks like we're able to. So
that's the thing. During this, we can't plan. It's just impossible to plan. It's when we really literally have to take it one day at a time because it changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On this Medicaid thing, you guys, I would advise you, if you're working with low socioeconomic, get a hold of the parameters, you know, what they pay for and what they don't pay for, and take a look and what you have to do to get paid and become a provider and all those. It may well be worth it. In the days that I was describing to you, there were also limits on what Medicaid would pay for. It didn't make, what we did was we found out though that there were different things that they would pay for at different times. And because of the numbers, I'm just going to say this, I'll probably hate it later that I did. Somebody else run in my face. The majority of the healing really happens in the groups, not the group therapies, not in the individuals, in the groups. So if you're organizing things to where providing that group becomes your priority, okay, then you can take the income that's coming in on the clinical and get very clear in your mind that a big piece of that is to provide that group. Yes, you got to cover your clinicians' costs and the overhead, but there's also money left over. That's the biggest mistake I see people make over and over and over, is because the group, the APG group, isn't a big income producing element, they starve it. And then they wonder why all of their clients are program hopping when they hit relapses. And they wonder why they're not getting a lot of calls, you know, they're not being referred by friends of their program members because they have no program. They're treating the first 30, 60, 90 days of the disease and then saying, hasta la vista, baby. So even though nobody ever made any money, I mean, I can tell you, I owned that program that was the largest Medicaid program in Texas. 1,800 active Medicaid clients at a time. I lived in a small 3-bedroom rent house. Okay. I was not rich. Nobody was rich. We had 205 full-time counselors. Nobody was getting rich, but all of us were making it just fine. All right. If you have nonprofit, you can pair the Medicaid income with grants and those kind of things and more than cover it. But it will solve, but the Medicaid program solved some of the transportation issues we had with the suburban groups, because it all works together kind of thing. So in today's class, that's really what I'm trying to get across is move to the next, whatever presents itself as the next move to make it. Find people who have done it, because almost everything has been done. We have 50 years. There's a lot of experience in 50 years. Find them, get your specific questions ready to go, and ask them. And I'm one of those by the way. All right. Any last minute questions or anything?
John, why were you afraid to say anything? Why did you say I'm going to regret saying that? Because I think everyone's head nodded in agreement. I'm just curious.
Well, later on, somebody will bring it up. So they'll go, you're devaluing the clinical elements. And I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I promise I'm not. But what is unfortunate is the clinical elements have all been addressed first with and the thing that carries the most power gets put on the back burner. And I've seen program after program after program get it right, hire some sort of leader that didn't get that, and destroy it. And so it's just it's just maddening for me. Sorry, y'all got a little feelers there. I'm sorry. I love you guys. Next week, maybe we'll continue with this some. I'd love to see what happens between now and then, as you check into some things and talk with some of the powers that be, et cetera. Any last minute stuff?
Awesome to meet all of y'all.
It's okay seeing you too. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later then. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.